Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly English shooting live stream. I, of course, will be your host, Callum, this evening to cover all the past week's shooting news and topics. So, thanks very much for joining. I hope you've all had a fantastic past week. For anybody that is returning to the stream, you know what it's all about. But for anybody new, welcome. This is your chance to get involved, have your opinions heard, raise questions, pose topics, anything you want to chat about, firearms or otherwise shooting, whatever. This is a forum where we can discuss things like adults and bring up sensitive, interesting topics for open conversation. So this evening, the main one, whilst this story is sort of a few weeks old, the main sort of headline of it of this 13,500 different firearms and other weapons that have been surrendered in the wake of two shootings in Serbia. And whilst obviously nothing to do with England or English shooting, Serbia is a place that I have spent a bit of time and have been out in for shooting related activities, and have previously covered their laws on the UK versus the UK. And I thought it's a very interesting reaction to a country that is, from my experiences previously, actually fairly pro-gun. And there's some very interesting minutiaries of the story that I want to cover and go into. We've also had a bit of an update and progression with the changing of firearms licensing that we're going to be discussing tonight, and they're bringing in mandatory level consistent training for all firearms licensing departments across the country. So we're talking about what they're bringing in, what we're going to see, and is it actually going to have an effect. And on firearms licensing, it's been announced that Devon and Cornwall are going to go back and review any licenses that have been given back after a revocation. It's sort of news, it sort of isn't. It's does leave you very much scratching your head of what the hell they're actually doing, or what they're doing when they're meant to be doing other things. I think a lot of people are thinking. And big news for the channel: we have hit 40,000 subscribers, and I'm sure that's in no small thanks to most of the people watching. If you haven't subscribed, why are you watching? If you watch regularly and you're not subscribed, why? And on the note of not doing things that you should be doing as you're watching, make sure you hit that like button, and of course subscribe, because I want to hit that 50. I want the main goal. It's always resets, isn't it? It's always the first, get the first 100, get the first 1,000, then 10,000, then you go up in the natural tens. Obviously the next sort of big one is 50, but really will at some point hit that 100,000 if I can pull my finger out and actually get some videos out. Yeah, that they're coming. That we will get there. So yeah, let's jump straight into the main sort of the main meat. So a little bit of backstory. What has happened? Let me bring up the first story. So it is sort of reminiscent of a lot of shootings that we see across the world. There's elements that are similar to the likes of what's happened here in the UK, and obviously what has happened out in the US as well, and other places all across the world. So there's actually been two shootings, and I believe they were a day apart, which is sort of a little bit unprecedented, and certainly within Serbia. So maybe some even backstory to Serbia. From what I can remember about their firearms law, they're not too dissimilar to the UK. Very different in terms of what they can legally own, mainly that they get to own handguns. And I was out there a few years ago for the European Handgun Championship. It was an IPSC level 4 handgun match, and I was covering that. There's, I think, some videos on the channel, and I think you can see more over on the UK PSA website. But sort of a similar process. It's not a free-for-all owning guns out in Serbia. There is licensing, there's cooperation with your local police force, and there are various restrictions and laws on there. So it is a structured firearms owning populace. So if you want to go and own a gun out there, there are some hoops that you need to jump through and some boxes that you need to tick. So people are to some level vetted. I believe there is also requirements to for certain guns that you go to a club. Again, very similar to what you have here within the UK. So coming forward to this shooting, so this is at the beginning of May, so a couple of weeks ago now, and it is just absolutely horrific. And there's, I think, one big takeaway certainly from this school shooting, that every firearms owner, no matter where you are in the world, you should really sit up and pay attention to, because I know there's a lot of people that are very defensive and blasé in some regards about their storage. So what happened? Well, this 13-year-old boy went into a school and ended up killing 8 children and a school guard. I believe a further child has actually succumbed to injuries as well. So I believe it's a total of 10 people, nine children and a school guard that has been killed. So horrific. Of course, a story like this is going to make international, not just national news, but international news. And a place like Serbia, which doesn't have things like this very often, and right off the back of another one as well. So this article goes into a little bit of a bit more detail of the school shooting, a little bit of a sort of blow by blow. And I can't remember if it's this one that ends up. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't pick up on that. The suspect can't face criminal charges because he is under 14. The Belgrade prosecutor's office said he has been taken to a psychiatric clinic, and social services will determine what happens to him thereafter. So, because obviously he's not old enough to stand trial, the responsibility should therefore fall to the parents, and that actually falls to the parent, the father, even more so. The police said that the shooter used his father's handgun, which was licensed. So this is why there's a lot of blowback and a lot of talk about lawful firearms within Serbia. Okay, going and murdering 10 people is already illegal out there, but they're already talking about further restrictions and licensing and bans because of what's happened, because he's used a lawful firearm. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what firearm, whether it's licensed or unlicensed. It's the fact that somebody's gone in there and done that. And as we're going to see from the numbers and statistics, there is a significant amount of unlicensed firearms floating around in Serbia. Interior Minister said the gun was kept in a safe, but the teen apparently knew the code. His father was also arrested. Now, for me, just on that, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. Yes, a 13-year-old, a child, even younger children, can be responsible and almost adult enough to be in possession of a firearm, to be safe, to be able to safely use a firearm. A 13-year-old, though, is not yet mature enough to make full adult decisions. And whilst there are people here within the UK that have licenses at very young ages, I think the youngest that I've ever been made aware of is 9 years old. There are subsequent laws on top of that, and I don't know if this is the case within Serbia as well, but additional laws which make it very hard for them to actually be in possession unsupervised with those guns, such as you can't buy a gun until you are 18 here within the UK. So you might be able to go and get your license at the age of 9, but you can't actually go into a gun shop and go and buy one. And I think it's incredibly irresponsible allowing your 13-year-old to know the code to your safe. Now, okay, and I know there's going to be a lot of people straight away that are going to come back and go, well, hang about, what about all the stories, usually in the US, about children using firearms to defend themselves? I think you can have a very long conversation about the pros and cons of where they've been used, um, positively, in a weird way. It's maybe not a positive situation, but they've been used, correctly within a defensive manner versus the offensive manner. Now, my personal feeling on it, because there's going to be no statistics about it, there's certainly nothing that I could find, is that when you get into 12, 13, 14 year olds, in my mind, there is a much higher risk of somebody of that age having unrestricted access to a firearm because of their age and their maturity. Yes, you can get very mature and very sensible, but they are still learning, they are still growing, and legally are not responsible for their own actions in places like Serbia and even here within the UK. So, how can you let somebody that is not legally responsible for their own actions have access to something like a firearm, access to something like a car, or any other, you know, let's say potentially dangerous machinery? It's to me, giving your son your code to your safe, your keys to your safe, is just absolutely dumbfounding. I have no problem at all with the idea of, taking a child out and teaching them, and mentoring them, and teaching them the basic principles of marksmanship and safe firearms handling. Even, getting them their own firearms so that they can, have a bit of ownership about it and be familiar with one type of gun and grow with that gun. But unrestricted access at the age of 13, you lock away alcohol. You put alcohol on the top shelf, and hide certain things away. Why would you allow it? Why would you allow somebody? That was, and this is, it's not just, this is a sort of snap thing. As what's been released as well, is this kid has been planning this for months now. You never really know what a child is up to in their bedroom. Don't No, don't even go there. You don't know. It is very hard to say, and there's a lot of parents that look up and go, in these circumstances, oh, there was no warning signs. I'm sorry, but the sort of individual that's able to go into a school and do this, there's usually some pretty clear warning signs. You look at the biggest cases out in the US, and you look at the individuals responsible, and it takes you 2 seconds to go, yeah, there's something not right with that person. The most famous in my mind is Sandy Hook. They were using firearms in a positive. The parents were using firearms in a positive way with their mentally ill son. It's conditioning. It gives you responsibility, and shooting and firearms handling can be a very good cure and therapy for various mental health issues. It's been shown many times under the right circumstances. In the incident of Sandy Hook, they didn't secure the firearms. The firearms were just kept in a closet, and of course the perpetrator of Sandy Hook was able to go there, grab the guns, shoot his own parents, and then go to the school. And we've seen something similar here, where maybe the parent hasn't been sensible enough and maybe switched on enough to go, it's probably a bad idea letting my 13-year-old son have unrestricted access to my guns. I cannot fathom, just comprehend or think. And I guess the best counter to those that are going to come on and say, well, these stories of 13-year-olds defending themselves in the house, well, should you, well, this is a whole other conversation, but um why are you leaving children unattended? Why are you allowing your children to be put in a situation where they're having to single-handedly defend themselves? That is, in my mind, up until the age of 18, that is down to the parent. So if you're not there to defend themselves, to defend them, neither should the gun be there. So if you really want your child to be defended by a firearm in those circumstances, then be with them at all times with that firearm, and obviously in places where you're able to do that sort of thing. So yeah, I just think it's a massive lesson and a massive eye opener to a lot of firearms owners that no matter how well you may trust your child, no matter how well you may think you know your child, there have been dozens and dozens of horrific cases where firearms have not been correctly stored, they've not been securely stored away from people under the age of 18, and tragic events like this have happened. And in my mind, as tragic as it may be even for the parent should be the one that faces the full letter of the law. They are ultimately responsible. If the 13-year-old is not legally responsible because of their age, that should then fall to the parents. And if your inaction to safely secure your firearms has allowed something like this to happen, the blame should ultimately fall with you. And I think that would send a much clearer message to firearms owners in Serbia, that want to continue owning their firearms. That if you play sort of hard and fast, or loose and fast with the laws and your legal responsibilities in that country to secure your firearms, you will face the full punishment for whatever happens as a result of those guns finding their way into the hands of people that they shouldn't, unsupervised. So yeah, that's the backstory of the first shooting. We've got this other second shooting, and I do apologize. I have used a Guardian page. It makes me feel dirty and unclean. Funerals begin in Serbia for victims of 2 mass shootings. So the second one, I think this is the second one. So the shooting on Wednesday in a school in Belgrade, and on Thursday. So yes, this was the second one. So literally back to back, day after day, in a rural area south of the capital city, have left the nation stunned with grief and disbelief. Through Serbia is awash with weapons and no stranger to crisis situations after the wars of the 1990s. A school shooting like this one on Wednesday has never happened before. The most recent previous mass shooting was in 2013, where a war veteran killed 13 people. So we've talked about the 13-year-old boy, and 30 miles south of Belgrade, it was a village for 5 young men. So obviously 2 very, very significant stories, very big bits of news within this country. And of course it has sparked the discussion of firearms ownership and what the government have looked upon. Now, with that second shooting, they haven't said, or I can't find anywhere that says whether it was a lawfully held firearm or an illegally held firearm. Now, of course, the press, no matter what country you're in or area of the world, are very quick to jump on the fact if it is a legally held firearm. So the fact that there's been no mention of either, I think that sort of defaults to it being an illegally held firearm. So you have a shooting with a legally held firearm, even though it wasn't legally stored and wasn't actually in lawful possession. So in some ways, that makes it does also make it an illegal firearm in that weird way, and one that I think was also committed with an illegal firearm. And this has led the government, who are obviously very well aware of these caches of weapons stored everywhere. And we're not talking just like semi-automatic pistols and a couple of semi-automatic rifles and maybe a few full auto AKs. You're talking like full-on munition stashes from the looks of the photos, and they've created an amnesty. Now, I honestly don't know why. Well, I do know why they've done this. It's quite obvious why they've gone to this. I don't know what an amnesty is going to prevent or stop. This isn't a solution. It doesn't prevent, but what it does do is give great coverage and publicity and media for the government. That is in terms of people's cries for there being less guns on the street and further restrictions. Well, showing a picture of 13,500 firearms and weapons laid there. Well, we're taking guns off the street. We're doing something. But I think this in isolation is absolutely extraordinary. Really, the amount of guns, the variety of guns that are being taken in. We've seen it before with gun grabs out in Australia. We've seen huge piles of guns like this before, but never the range of weapons and munitions that we're seeing. So authorities in Serbia have displayed tens of thousands of weapons that they said people have handed over after back-to-back mass shootings stunned the Balkan nation. The government declared 1 month's amnesty period for citizens to surrender unregistered weapons as part of a crackdown following the two shootings 2 days this month that left 17 people dead, many of them children. So officials said residents have turned over 13,500 items since the amnesty opened on May the 8th. And you can see like the sort of variety there of firearms. Plenty of handguns. Is that it's not what's that VZ58 maybe? I think a few shotguns there. I think from the other side, a lot of bolt action rifles, handguns, and I think this is probably the juicy bit. But look at these crates. That's not your average. Oh yes, I've got granddad's, Webley up in the attic. Those that's some serious, serious collections of firearms there. But it does go in scene. Photos of the scene showed lines of rifles, automatic weapons, and pistols stacked neatly on the floor in a warehouse, along with wooden box filled with hand grenades. So this is why I don't get the connection or really the significance of an amnesty like this in solving the problem, because these we're not seeing people run into schools or throwing hand grenades down the streets. As far as I'm aware, these murders weren't committed with automatic weapons, or I think maybe the second one was committed with a rifle, but not shotguns. And it's the sort of people that are gonna come in and hand these in, and it said something along the lines of, I think it's about 50%, it's about half and half, 50-50 of unregistered firearms that has been handed in and registered firearms that have been handed in, legal firearms. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that maybe don't shoot as much as they do, and maybe are worried that their guns could fall into the wrong hands, or feel that they are incapable of securely storing them, or just don't want that sort of responsibility. If you're not going to rise up to that responsibility, if you don't feel that you're able to safely secure them and keep them locked away, then yeah, but like give them to somebody else. Like we don't want people that are irresponsible or incapable of safely owning firearms, being in possession of them. But when you start getting handed in grenades, like the grenades are not the problem here. It makes for a very sexy soundbite and very sexy photos, but there's still this is going to be the tip of the iceberg. And the fact that there's this sort of weaponry out there already from the various conflicts that Serbia has been involved in, you've got to think there's going to be tens of thousands of more of firearms out there. There's going to still be a lot of lawful owners out there. Just doing a bit of a photo shoot and seen to be doing something, once again, isn't actually solving the real issue here. The real issue with the first shooting is that obviously some firearms owners out there don't understand the full gravity of the responsibility to keep things locked away and secured as per their laws. The second shooting very much sounds like a mental health issue. But then when you've got a country that have all of these serious firepower unregistered, just floating about in the ether, you ban every single gun, you take every lawful firearm off the streets, somebody who's mentally unwell is still going to be able to go out there and get something that's illegal. So yeah, I don't think at the moment, this sort of 13,500 guns is going to be held as some sort of victory. And there's already calls of, well, if all of these weapons are out there already, why do people need them? Even the guns that are legally owned, why do people need them? And there's a very interesting, it's not necessarily next door, but there's been this growing conversation more recently, uh, because of Ukraine, and Serbia isn't a million miles away. Okay, they've got a little bit of a buffer there, but Serbia is not. It's not like Poland and Romania and even Hungary are pretty chilled at the moment about what's going on in Ukraine. Their senses are a little bit more heightened to what's going on. And what Ukraine has demonstrated is still in the modern age, a fairly established modern country can be invaded. A country with a high standard of living. I always forget to make it big. Anyway, a country with a fairly high standard of living has been invaded, and like a switch, we've suddenly seen massive calls. I mean, even our own government here in the UK are shipping out munitions, firearms, javelins, anything that sort of goes bang out to Ukraine so that they're able to use it. And everyone that is now looking at this shooting in Serbia, no matter how tragic and sad and horrific it is, I think the argument or the flippant comments of why does anybody need a firearm, certainly in a country where they've had severe conflicts, long drawn out bloody conflicts in fairly recently in terms of historical terms. um just look at Ukraine of why you need a skill at arms, why there is a need for firearms ownership, and for people to be competent with them. Something that's always overlooked here, even within the UK, are the what's the word, yeah, sort of modus operandi of our national governing bodies, the purposes of the NRA, the NSRA, the UK PSA, all of which within their constitutions, I can't think of the actual, maybe it is constitutions, but within their within the body of what they are, it's about increased skill at arms. And it says, let's just see if I can find it. um uh Maybe NSRA usually find it a lot quicker. The it's things like within our laws, the miniature rifle exemption that was born out of us getting absolutely our asses handed to us in the Boer War. And it was like, oh, hang on a minute, like we may not necessarily need people marching out and marching up and down the streets every day with their rifles, but we certainly need people that, if called upon, can go out there and defend the country, both at home and domestically and foreign. Home references, location, where is it? Home. It used to be everywhere. Um, Clubs, downloads, links, policy, news, membership. I can't remember what they. Let's go for home. It's like it's like the organizational purpose. Um, Clubs, club fire performance clubs. Okay. There could be like an about us, right? Membership. Let's go NS. We'll find it. Um, anyway, I think we've discovered it on the channel previously. Um, I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Basically, these, the NRA, the NSRA, UK PSA were created to help increase marksmanship within the UK, for these exact reasons, and yet you know, people like to use the argument of why do you need a gun? Oh, well, I don't think you're going to be asking the people of Ukraine that story. But anyway, let me know what you guys think of this. Is removing 13,500 different firearms and grenades out of Serbian streets going to stop any shootings and make people safer at night? Probably not. Let's say at Glenta Light, they've gotten very soft. Yeah, this is I'm sort of surprised. I am surprised out of all the countries out there. Somewhere like Serbia, it was my feeling was they were very sort of gun proud and sort of very pro gun out there, and they understood the full aspects of firearms and need for firearms, and given their history. So the fact that they seem to have gone a very sort of UK, Australian, a very Western approach to these sort of school shootings is very, very interesting. Maybe shows the worldwide, let's say, sort of barometer at the moment where it comes to firearms ownerships. I don't know. I think we've said recently, with everything that was going out in Ukraine, perhaps there was more understanding about firearms, and people wanting to keep up their keep up their skill at arms. Atlanta Light, you'd think after having had literal genocides for not even 3 decades ago, they wouldn't give up their guns so easily. Oh yeah, and then you say they've gotten very soft. It is quite remarkable, and a lot of people have already said, well, look, if a place like Serbia can start giving up their guns, what about America? And America, it's summed up very, very nicely with a lot of the more recent responses to gun amnesties and why they don't work. Is not only is it from my cold dead hands sort of approach out in America, but they're also very crafty when it comes to amnesties because of the quite loose definition of what a firearm is out there, i.e., just literally a receiver. You get people nailing bits of pipe to wood or printing, 3D printed plastic receivers and cashing in. A lot of these amnesties offer some sort of incentives. So it's like $100, $200. And I remember there was a picture in recent months of this guy who had literally a box of 3D printed receivers that probably cost him a fiver in plastic, and was making bank. I think ended up going away with like £5,000 or £10,000 worth of vouchers for printing a load of receivers. That's why amnesties don't really work in America, and I guess for the same sort of reason, in the sense that when you have that level of unlicensed firearms and the severity or the level of firearms and weaponry that is available, just taking a few off the streets, does it really make a difference? The plentiful supply that's out there. A criminal might want to get rid of a hot gun, that's maybe being used a little bit too much. Easy way to get rid of it with no traceability, and then they're just going to go and get something else if they really want to. It's just, and if anything, it just sort of fuels the black market of firearms, because people are going to want to go back, aren't they? The amnesty was for unlicensed firearms, so nothing to do with their means of legal ownership, surely. No, it's a complete amnesty. So this is what they were saying, is it was intended for unlicensed firearms. Again, the logic on that, somebody goes into a kid goes into a school with a legally held firearm and kills a load of people, and then they do a amnesty focused on unlicensed legal firearms to be surrendered. What? How is that connected? Look at the failings of how somebody managed to get hold of that legally held firearm to begin with, that licensed firearm to begin with. Where was the breakdown in the chain there? That's where your problem's going to be, and that's where you need to focus. But no, this is why it is so surprising, is that it's not just people wanting to get rid of unlicensed firearms to sort of, excuse the pun, dodge a bullet if they're found with them. Uh, but people that are licensed to own firearms, licensed firearms, are being handed in there, which I don't think we've seen even here in the UK with Dunblane. There were a few people that I've heard, they said, I saw the writing on the wall and I didn't want anything to do with it. I was vilified as a shooter and it put me right off. So I gave it up. Um, you know, whether they surrendered their guns for free at a police station, or they, cashed in at an RFD or got their friends to buy them. Um, you know, but on that sort of scale, like a 50-50 split of lawful firearms being handed in, I don't think we've ever seen that, or I'm not aware of that anywhere in the world, where that sort of scale of licensed firearms owners have decided, yeah, I literally want to just give up my guns. It is a little odd, especially especially in a country like Serbia. Peter Rose, hola, what a sado I am in Spain, and I'm still listening. Well, it's much appreciated. And for anyone that is listening as well, make sure you hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed as well. Aaron T. Washington also passed an assault weapons ban recently. The gun ban agenda is a global thing. That is something we've discussed with the likes of Canada recently, is there is a general theme across the world of the walls closing in. With America, it's just ping pong. You can't have bump fire stocks, you can have bump fire stocks. It's like assault weapons ban, and then it gets overturned. It's unconstitutional, and you get sheriffs of local towns looking up and going, I'm not going to enforce this, buy whatever you want to buy. It's a very different ball game, very interesting dynamic that I don't think even Americans sort of understand really what's going on over there some of the times. Dean Hall, completely agree. If anybody obtained access to my firearms, then it would be my fault. Absolutely, and I would be exactly the same. That's why no one will ever know the location of my safe keys. Okay, at the moment it's air guns, but hopefully at some point. But even things like the armory keys for magload. They aren't just left about. I'm not going to talk about how, where, and why I keep them, but they're not easily accessible to anyone, even people that are very close to me. It would take a little while to find them, because I understand the responsibility, and to me that's on a complete another level. You're not just talking about one safe full of guns, half a dozen, maybe a dozen guns here. It's a whole armory full of all sorts, a whole plethora of different stuff, and and ammunition as well. So the responsibility, if anybody was able to get hold of those armory keys and get access to the armory, the responsibility is on myself to prevent that, and nobody else's. So same for your guns at home. Ian Price, completely agree. But until a year ago, I lived in Charleston, SC. It's a totally different culture. You only have to look at the recent case where a 6-year-old took a gun and shot a teacher in Virginia. I mean, when you say so, yeah, I know there are. I think what you're saying is in certain parts of the world, in certainly certain parts of America, it is just part of the culture that the kids will have guns. It's just, uh, they put a rifle over their back and they go out there and hunt. Um, the thing is, the world, for better or for worse, mostly for worse, has changed, and we've talked about the copycat effects previously with the light of Port Arthur and Dunblane. um, children now are children are easily influenced. There's no doubt about it. No matter how mature they are, easily influenced. Peer pressure is an incredible thing and an incredible influencer. And it's not necessarily peer pressure, but who now are children's peers. More children spend more time and get more influence from what is on their phone than they do from their actual face-to-face physical peers. And when they're seeing all of these shootings, be that in Serbia, be that in America, be that anywhere across the world, there is a certain influence there. And it can negatively program people to you know, to act or respond, or retaliate in certain ways. So I think we have to be very mindful of the world that we now live in, and the seeming ease that it is for people to turn to violence. And children are going to copy that. People are children certainly are going to mimic that. And I think, you know, in my mind, ultimately the people that have the biggest part to play in the provocation of mass shootings is the media. And I've used the example loads of times about New Zealand. I think what New Zealand did after the mosque shooting was absolutely incredible, and everybody should follow what they did. Not once was the shooter's name, mentioned. They gave very little publicity and information. There was a nationwide ban on it. They didn't glorify them. They didn't talk endlessly about them. It was about the victims, and these sad, lonely individuals that end up going and committing these acts. It's all about them. They want to try and take something away from their victims. So the last thing they want is for them for the victims to get the attention, and the publicity that the perpetrators feel that they deserve. So yeah, I think the media play a huge part in influencing, and could even go as far as saying encouraging young people to act and behave in certain ways that lead to events like this. Maybe not having a firearms amnesty in Serbia that's needed. Have a media amnesty. Is it that much of a coincidence that they, in a country where they don't have many mass shootings, it is actually very, very rare that they have one of the worst in their history, and then literally the next day there's another mass shooting? How it would be very interesting to see if there was any connection. Was that person that committed the second mass shooting inspired, influenced, provoked by seeing what would have been non-stop national news coverage of the first mass shooting? We've got to ask ourselves, actually, really publicizing this sort of thing, and giving the. I'm always very, very careful when talking about these. I don't want to show pictures of the people responsible for it. I don't want to even mention their names, because it should be about. It should be the circumstances of the shooting. It should be, if anything, if you're going to talk about any particular people, it needs to be about the victims. But yeah, maybe it should. Maybe if you want to stop mass shootings, let's ban the media from talking about it. I would be happy if that came in for law. We could never utter the word mass shooting on YouTube, or BBC, or where else, Sky News, or whatever, CNN. I think that would probably have the biggest effect, rather than banning certain types of guns, or having yeah, assault weapons bans or firearms amnesties. Lewis, Wiles, the removal of thousands of unregistered firearms can't be a bad thing. Neither is people willing to turn over guns they no longer want to take responsibility for. The last bit of it, I completely agree. Yeah, again, if you're not willing to take the responsibility and hold that responsibility, you should give up your firearms. It's you know, yes, a gun is an inanimate object. Absolutely, and it's only the person that is responsible for what happens with that firearm. But you can't just hide behind that to remove your own responsibility. It's still something that you don't want certain people to get a hold of. You don't want certain people to have access to. So if you've got to the point now where you're just looking at that gun and I'm just going to leave it in this drawer, maybe at that point, there's it's like powerful prescription medicines. You don't tend to just leave lying about, certainly when there's children. Certain chemicals you wouldn't just leave lying about. A stove you wouldn't fire, whatever. Swimming pools you wouldn't just let a toddler walk around a swimming pool. And there's loads of things that have an inherent responsibility of their owners, the custodians, whatever, to make sure that certainly children don't fall foul of these potential harmful objects. In terms of the removal of thousands of unregistered firearms, can't be a bad thing. Well, in terms of your specific words, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with unregistered firearms. This could go down a very, very long conversation. I am a supporter, certainly within the UK, of our licensing system, and firearm. People that own firearms have gone through some sort of vetting and checks, and they are of sound mind and they are sensible, responsible people. But the idea that an unregistered firearm is just inherently bad, I think is flawed. There's lots of countries out there across the world, not just America, that there are lots of unregistered firearms, and yet you don't have these sorts of shootings. You don't have the sort of firearms crime and gun crime out there. So I guess can't be a bad thing. Yeah, but I don't think that automatically makes it a good thing. And certainly if you're trying to find the root cause and trying to do things to help prevent shootings like this, I don't think the removal of unregistered firearms really has a big part to play in it. Certainly in a country where there are so many. We, again, talked loads of times before about firearms in the US and the comparisons to the war on drugs. Something along the lines of there were 10 million regular drug users, or at the point of these statistics, there was like 10 million um, regular drug users, and yet they called the war on drugs a failure. They literally couldn't stop something that 10 million people were doing. And the estimates at the time were something that there were 150 million firearms owners. How on earth, if you're going to be unsuccessful in stopping 10 million people in doing something, why in your right mind would you ever think you'd be able to stop 150 million people from doing it? It's just, and especially like drugs. Are drugs easier to trace? Certainly, if you've got a gun on you, people aren't necessarily going to know that you've got a gun. If you've got a gun stashed away, I suppose if you've got drugs stashed away, I suppose if you use the gun, that's quite easy to detect. But yeah, anyway, I was going to go down a weird tangent, then I went. Um, if you're a regular Do you get a gun addiction? I guess that's the biggest question. Do you get that addiction to need to go out into your garden and fire off some rounds? I don't think that's a necessity. Whereas regular drug users need to go and get their fix, and while they're getting their fix, it's usually pretty obvious that they've got guns on them, that they're taking drugs. Anyway, weird analogy, but anyway, the war on drugs has been held as a failure. any sort of war on guns in a place like America, or even I think like a place in Serbia where there is a plentiful supply of unregistered firearms, is just not the right way to go about it. Perhaps now is the time for all patriotic Americans who own assault weapons to donate them to the Ukrainian soldiers. And I know instantly what people are going to, what Americans and certainly very pro Second Amendment advocates are going to say to that is, no, 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 we're going to keep our guns to make sure that we never need to be we never end up in a situation like Ukraine. You know, the whole thing about if somebody ever invaded America, there would be a rifle barrel between every blade of grass. That's, you know, it's sort of in a sense a little bit like a joke, but it's not. Logan finally caught the stream. Well, thank you very much for joining. Terry, excuse my ignorance, but what has Serbia got to do with the UK? Very little. But it is an interesting topic, and as I said at the beginning, I've been out to Serbia. I've done videos on Serbian gun laws before, and you know what happens internationally will have an effect on what we do. You know, what's happened out in Canada is going to have an effect on us here within the UK. When laws get passed in one country, like stuff that happened in New Zealand was being quoted here. It's like, well, they're doing it there, so we must do it here. So I think we have to be very mindful of what we're seeing on an international level as a precursor, or maybe a warning or a sign of where things are potentially happening on average globally. But I get it. Let's talk about something UK based and something very topical. I did actually think this probably should have been the main topic for this evening, but I like to mix it up. We do talk a lot about firearms licensing here on the channel, and tonight is going to be no different. So, interesting story that has come out of Basque. Mandatory training for firearms inquiry officers welcomed by Basque. So, firearms licensing and training has been an incredibly hot topic for the past couple of years now. The disparity between the performance and application of firearms law from county to county. Within the UK here, we have a firearms licensing department for each county, and the way that they interpret it, the way they imply it, apply the law, the training that they receive, the education that they receive to do the job just varies massively. And something that has been called upon since the Lord Cullen report is the need for a unified, regular training scheme, so that not only do we ensure that all FEOs and people that work within firearms licensing are up to the same level and same minimum standard, but that it's all consistent, that what they're being taught is consistent, what they are learning is consistent, and how they apply the law is consistent. So this is really, really big news. And, as Bass put it in another article that we'll have a look in a sec, it is a massive step in the right direction. This is what we have needed, not just for the last couple of years since the atrocities in Plymouth. This is what we've been needing since Dunblane. It's only taken them, like 30 years. So news that national accredited training program will be rolled out across all 43 firearms licensing departments in England and Wales has been welcomed by Basque. Basque was informed of the new program during meetings with the Home Office. The College of Policing has been provided with a £500,000 fund to implement the training course that will be mandatory for all firearm inquiry officers, caseworkers, and decision makers. It is expected to be rolled out in 2024. Martin Parker, Basque's head of firearms, said Basque has long called for accredited training to reduce the level of inconsistency currently seen throughout firearms licensing departments. A mandatory level of training for firearm inquiry officers will ensure applicants are given the same level of service across the board. BASC will continue to engage with the College of Policing to ensure the implementation remains on time. And going further into this story from Martin Parker himself, and I do, you know, I give credit where credit's due. I have had my reservations and concerns about Mr. Parker coming from neighbours, but BASC on the firearms licensing front, BASC do seem to, well, I certainly seem to be incredibly aligned with BASC's approach, and they do seem to be, let's at the very least, encouraging results within firearms licensing, the Home Office, and change in a positive direction. So the announcement of £500,000 training fund for firearms licensing teams is positive for license holders and the general public alike, says Martin Parker. I mean, I guess the first thing is when you've got 50, £500,000 and 40, was it 43? Let's just make it quick maths. Um, you've got, let's say, 50 firearms licensing departments. So that's £10,000 pounds each per licensing department. Now, okay, £10,000 each. That doesn't sound. That is right, isn't it? Yeah, 12 by 5 divided by 10. Yeah, £10,000 per department. Is that enough? Certainly, when some firearms licensing department will have 10 or 15 people that under this would need training, £10,000 then doesn't seem to go go very a long way. £1,000 training course, is that, let's say you've got 10 people within a department that need training. That's £1,000 per person that they're being given. Now, £1,000 sounds quite a lot, but certainly within the commercial world, I've done accredited training with the likes of SolidWorks, which is a CAD program. I've done it with Altium, which is a PCB schematic and PCB layout bit of software. It cost on both of those. And this was a while ago, probably getting on to like 10 years ago. And I think the cheapest of one of those courses was over 1,500 quid, ex VAT. So, learning a, sort of foundation, doing a foundation training on SolidWorks is costing, probably with inflation, twice the amount that they've allocated to understand a very, very complex area of the law. I'm not one necessarily to be frivolously wanting to throw away public money and taxpayers' money, but £500,000 doesn't actually sound that much. Actually, that's pretty insulting. £500,000 to address and correct what is widely regarded as the big issue with firearms licensing, but yet they go and drop millions on banning Mars and lever release. Like, where's the balance there? I can't remember the exact figures off the top of my head, but we went through it and through estimates. We were talking, the offensive weapons bill and the banning specifically of Mars and lever release rifles ended up costing millions and millions of pounds. What would be more effective? What would be a better, we've always said the money spent on that would have been far better spent elsewhere. But if they can cough up millions of pounds to confiscate firearms that have never been used in crime, why are they only coughing up £500,000 on something that has been requested since Dunblane to be put into action? Something that the coroner from the Plymouth shooting, the Keyham shooting, has come out and said training pretty much first and foremost needs to be the main attention. Like, probably the coroner report of the Keyham shooting is probably going to be costing north of £500,000 as it is. I Yeah. I mean, it's better than nothing, but you look up and down the country what some local counties will spend on just ridiculous projects, and this is a nationwide thing of firearms license to fix literally the biggest problem within firearms licensing. Standardized training for all departments, and they've only given them a £500,000. I would very much like to see some more funding in the future. That's for sure. We will talk about my potential objections of where that funding is going, specifically going in a second. So firearms legislation in the UK is immensely complex. I know this all too well, as I've been working with it for the last 36 years in my previous role as a forensic scientist, and now as the head of firearms at BASC. Firearms Act 1968, often referred to as the Principal Act, has seen considerable amendment, major changes. In addition to this, there have been elements tagged onto policing and crime bills and other pieces of legislation. In total, there are over 30 pieces of legislation that affect the ownership and use of firearms in the UK. This is one of the many reasons that good training is so important for the members of firearms licensing teams in UK police forces. As far back as the Dunblane tragedy, the need for comprehensive training for licensing departments has been identified to ensure a high level of expertise. So yeah, they're putting in. So this was announced. The recent announcement. Is that a link? Is that going to take us to the? No, that's just going to put us round in a circle. By the chair of the Firearm Explosives Licensing Working Group, Felwig, Chief Constable Debbie Tads, that the Home Office has put aside £500,000 for dedicated training of licensing staff. Like, bearing in mind, like £500,000 isn't even the operational budgets for some firearms licensing departments. It does seem a little bit weak. This will be combined with a new authorized professional practice APP that has been produced by the College of Policing. The latter is a positive step towards both certificate holders and the public being better served. Let's have a quick look at this. Where does this it's all the AP. That link just takes you to all the APPs. BASC and other organisations were consulted on the draft document, and Bill Harriman, BASC's Director of Firearms, gave comprehensive feedback. This new training package is to be implemented over the next 12 months. Accreditation delivering such a package, however, is only part of the equation. To be effective, there must be a way of ensuring that the learning is put into practice. And this is the other element. You can teach somebody until you're blue in the face. You do need to make sure that they've taken it on board, that they've learned it, that they've it's sunk in, and that they're also practicing that. It's you can learn it, but you need to have a test. It's why you have driving lessons, and then you have a driving test, and then also with driving you have accountability. If you start going through red lights, it's not going to be long until you're caught, stopped, and probably lose that license. Maybe that's the ultimate turn the turn the tables on firearms licensing. Maybe firearm inquiry officers need to be licensed. That's it. We don't need to license the firearms. We need to license the people giving out the certificates. There we go. Callum for Prime Minister. There's a thought. It has been suggested that decision makers or licensing departments are accredited on an annual basis. This is effectively how organizations such as forensic laboratories are regulated so that the public can have confidence in the service delivered. It's likely the HMIC will oversee such accreditation. So this is a big step, and as they do summarize. Nevertheless, let us be optimistic. This is definitely a step in the right direction, and it is hoped that BASC and other shooting organizations are given the opportunity to provide constructive feedback to Felwig as the training is rolled out. Now, the negative, the uh, the negative part of this, and I've got to be negative, is of course who, and they haven't mentioned it, but we've touched upon this company before, but this is most likely going to be the company that is providing the training. So Mulberry Partners, it's a collation of ex. We can go to the let's meet the team. Ken McIntosh retired from the police service as an assistant chief constable. Tim recently retired from the police service as a deputy chief constable. Paul Williams, finance. So he's obviously the business guy there. But yeah, the majority of the team are high up police officers. And okay, right, this that's obviously going to give them a lot of understanding and obviously gravitas within that community of being, you would think, qualified to roll something out with firearms. But just because you've come from the police doesn't give you automatic knowledge and experience and expertise on firearms. So there could be like misnomer number one, and I think they've sort of admitted this, as we've talked about previously, but I am going to bring it up. I think it is the course. So, literally the only media that they've put, I don't think there's any more videos. I am going to just have a check on their YouTube channel. Yes, they have one video on their YouTube channel. So this one's obviously by link only. Uh, but what, I think they've, where is it? It's somewhere around here. Or maybe it's the Felwig one. Maybe it is the other one. Them themselves might not be necessarily experts in firearms licensing. Go away. But Mr. Mark Gruthius, who used to be the head of Hampshire Firearms Licensing, does have a lot of experience with firearms licensing. Whether or not you think he left Hampshire Firearms in a good state, and Hampshire Firearms is a model, a model firearms licensing department, I'll let you decide that. I might be biased, but but anyway. Oh no, I've kept it small, haven't I? There we go. You can see it now, but it's so Mulberry Partners, as far as I'm aware, are the only accredited training partners for the College of Police. They are the only company that are sanctioned to give training. And to me, that doesn't necessarily sit completely right with me, because just having one, you're instantly the best, but you're also the worst. I think it is something that maybe if you have one, then it's consistent. But then what if that one is not good? If that is the only one on offer, where's the measure? Are the training courses here correct? Is Mulberry Partners' interpretation, or even Mark Gruthius's interpretation of firearms law, correct? Now, it is good that it seems that BAS does have some sort of input and can obviously oversee and keep an eye on what is being implemented and what is being trained. I would like to see a little bit more of a free market on this area. Yes, the training has to be consistent. Actually, the training doesn't need to be consistent. I'm going to do a 180 on that, very, very quick. The training doesn't need to be consistent. It's the accreditation that needs to be consistent. At the end of the day, there's many different ways to skin a cat, right? We have different learning establishments. We have private schools, we have state schools, we have academies, we have different educational establishment that have different ways and flavors of of teaching. You know, I went to a sixth form. It was very more school than it was college. You know, so a college teaches people differently to what a sixth form will, and there'll be different colleges that have different flavors and different ways. So the teaching isn't necessarily doesn't have to be uniform, doesn't have to be exactly the same copy and paste because different people learn in different ways. Um, it's the tests that have to be the same, and that was the same when you look at GCSEs, when you look at A levels. You know, degrees is different because it is set by the university, but you know, other national qualifications, you know, GCSEs, you know, A levels, you sit the exact same paper, then you know the same somebody sitting that exam in Portsmouth is going to be sitting, you know, is going to be sitting the exact same paper that somebody in Newcastle is sitting. So, and they might have been to two very different schools, had very different teachers, very different um in some ways curriculum, and certainly application of that curriculum. So I really would like to see a little bit more of a free market of providing training. You know, why isn't Basque, you know, for all of the knowledge and the expertise that Basque continuously remind us that they have, why isn't somewhere like Basque putting forward a training program for firearms licensing? Because I'm sorry, it's like the people are going to talk about bias. Yeah, of course, Basque is going to be biased um, in form and in favor of firearms owners and certificate holders. But are you telling me that a company that is owned by two previous senior police officers and somebody from a firearms licensing department that has a reputation for wanting to take away firearms certificates rather than give them out isn't going to be biased towards the police, isn't going to be biased um, against firearm certificate holders? So where's the middle ground there? And I think the test, the accreditation, that is what needs to be uniform. That's how you ensure everybody has got to the same minimum level by them all sitting the same test and having to hit the same minimum bar. But I think there needs to be a freer market with the training, and that itself will introduce balance. That in itself does introduce more choice and more competition. Um, because at the moment, you know, if Mulberry Partners are the only accredited training provider, they can charge whatever they like. Where else are they going to go? It's a monopoly. You know, our firearms licensing courses, we provide 3 bespoke courses to police forces in England and Wales, which are designed by experts to cover important areas of firearms licensing, which supports all those employed within the police firearms licensing community. The courses offered are firearm licensing inquiry officer, firearms licensing administrator, firearms licensing decision maker. Very, very, very interesting. You know, those specific 3: firearms licensing inquiry officer, firearms licensing administrator, firearms licensing decision maker. And then when we go back to Basque, let me just find it. Or was it the first one? I'm going to find it. There we go. So it's the first article. If we go back to here, so we'll look at here again. Firearms licensing inquiry officer, firearms licensing administrator, firearms licensing decision maker. And then you go back to this story and they've got mandatory for all firearm inquiry officers, caseworkers, and decision makers. So apart from caseworkers, which is an administrator. So yeah, I think that's the tie, that's the link. Um, you know, the Home Office have approved the College of Policing a £500,000 budget to train those specific people, and here we have Mulberry Partners offering training in those 3 specific sections. And I've never seen it broke down like that before. This is actually the first time. And you know, funny enough, I've been this is the first time I've been on Mulberry Partners for a long time, and this is new. I don't recall seeing this. So the tie-up is just, you know, is just unreal. So yeah, that it's going to be Mulberry Partners giving that training. I think there needs to be a bit more competition. You know, who trains the trainer? Who accreditors? Who gives accreditation to the trainers? You know, that's what I'd be more concerned about out there. Anyway, what are you saying? Maglo Training Services Limited. Yes. Oh, let me, please, please. Uh, hello, everyone. I will be your firearms licensing instructor today. Uh, I will teach you what the law is. The thing is, I joke, I probably would do a better job. I think I'd actually be more impartial. Freedom of the press and laws like that won't stand. Yeah, true. Talking about that, let's move on to Rick B. English shooting. Who are you and what have you done with the regular Basque bashing Callum? I say this all the time. Like, there was just an unfortunate period where Basque just couldn't seem to do anything right. And I was having this thought today, actually, going forward. I am getting very, very close to joining again, begrudgingly, like annoyingly begrudgingly, because yes, the whole thing with lead, ugh, like, if you want some Basque bashing, just start me up on the lead. And the lack of support around, you know, my main reason for leaving Basque was not only did they fail to really give any support for, you know, the Mars lever release owners, and even the 50 cal owners, they then tried to take credit for being a big part of why 50 cal rifles didn't get banned, and it had like absolutely nothing to do with it. And not only did they try to take credit for it, they were like, "Oh, we did this solely for the target sport community, you know, target shooting community." No, they didn't. It was like, anyway, I'm not going down that. The really annoying thing is obviously something that is incredibly close to my heart, something that I'm incredibly passionate about. You know, the law of firearms, firearms licensing applications, the firearm certificates, the firearm, you know, the shotgun certificates. That area is really something that I've inadvertently ended up specializing in over the past few years. And Basque, in my mind, just seem to be doing everything right in that regard. So, you know, pretty much the main thing that I tend to focus on in this channel, you know, the channel was born in trying to explain and expand on the firearms law here within the UK. So from the very start, it's been something, you know, massively ingrained in this channel. And you know, the protection of firearms law, the protection of firearm certificate holders, Basque do seem to be doing, in that aspect, they seem to be doing a very, very good job. Yeah, it will be all meaningless when we have to only use still shot and we lose lead ammunition. And, you know, it will be meaningless when they slowly come after all of our different firearms and Basque go, oh no, you know, side by sides and over and unders and a bolt action rifle is all you need. You know, so that's, but I really can't fault them on what they're doing with firearms licensing. And they are the biggest organization, and they do have usually the loudest voice at the table when they sit in front of the Home Office. And if they seem to be doing everything right in that aspect, that is probably, you know, like this is going to sound incredibly blasé, and a lot more than it should, but um yes, I am absolutely bothered by you know, using lead and using steel, but we will adapt. We will adapt and overcome in that regard. If firearms licensing is taking 3-4 years to issue certificates, if it's £500 to you know, apply for a license, if they can take away your license for just looking in the wrong direction, that really does stop you. You know, you need a gun first to be able to worry about what you're shooting out of it. So in my mind, yes, Bass could be doing a lot better job with the whole lead, but where they are getting it right is the most important aspect. Is making sure that people can still get firearm certificates, that people can still get to the point of owning a firearm and to begin with. But yeah. Half 500k, it won't go far, maybe get through one round of training, and if it has to cover the cost of developing the training course, they will spend it very fast. Well, this is the benefit of going to someone like Mulberry Partners, is they have developed the course. So they've invested that, they've put the money, they're a business, they've invested in creating this course that they can now offer. You know, it's just like with developing any sort of product. You know, at Magload, we have to invest money into, you know, time usually in but money in getting materials in, different fixings, you know, prototypes, to build a product first before you then release it. So that's the benefit of going to a commercial company like this, is that they can come to a, you know, with a no risk solution, because the police haven't had to pay to develop them themselves. But then when there's £500,000 on the table, then they get to have their cherries. Richard, it can cost upwards of £5,000 to get a Certac Certac security clearance before you even think of training. Exactly. EnglishShooting, will Magload ever start making custom built ARs in different calibers? If I remember correctly, you talked about them in the past. Absolutely. We're actually in the talking of developing and investing and all that. Of course, our main focus at the moment is the magazine, and great progress is being made on that. And we don't, it has unfortunately sort of stopped everything else. First of all, we don't think it's necessarily right to be coming out with new things and doing new projects when there's one quite major one that a lot of people are waiting for to be released. So we really want to, you know, all of our brain power, all of our focus, all of our energy is on finishing the magazine project first, and getting the magazines out to market. But something that is, you know, has been worked on in the background and put on hold for a little bit, is something that we're going to call, this is a working name, but I think should be the final name, but Built by Magload. And obviously we do a lot of gunsmithing already. We will do port job, we will kit out a gun, we will do any modification that you need or want doing to your gun, be that for competition, for long range shooting, for plinking, or just for looks. If you want something done to your gun, like, we have the capabilities and the experience to be able to do it in-house. But there's no sort of set menu. And we actually get a lot of people that like email and they go, "Oh, do you do this?" Of course, the main business of Magload is the products and the website and e-commerce effectively. But we do a lot of gunsmithing. We do a lot of gun modification and tuning and you know, racing. So, you know, making guns competition race ready. And we're at a point where, you know, we're looking at ways that we can grow and expand the company, and that's an area that I think we should be promoting and pushing more. So I think the whole Built by Magload, the Magload sort of gun brand, as it will be, is going to be more along the lines of modifications and racing, having like very similar, I'd say, actually, to Terran Tactical, where you can go and get a Terran Tactical M2. Well, we want you to be able to come and get a Magload M2. We want it to be more bespoke. There will be a sort of off-the-shelf option, but we don't want it just to be a generic option. You know, if you buy the Magload gun, this is what you're going to get. No, this is an example of what you could get. But if you want to talk to us and you want this, or you don't want that, or you want to tweak this, we want a more personal, customized, I guess, premium tailored experience to building the exact gun for you. And it's not necessarily just an M2 or a 1301. It's, you know, whether you want to do that to a Stoger M3K, whether you want to do that to an Armsan A612, you know, I say a dissident arm, they're pretty ready to go as it is. But an Armsan RS S1, Nova Speed, Super, like whatever gun that you feel is right for you, we will do what you need and what you want to it. So we're gonna watch this space. You will see more of that. But yes, long term, we want to be making our own guns, and I think the first step is going to be to do our own receiver for an AR-15 receiver set. That is very, very high up on the list. We will, of course, we're very competition focused, so it will be a competition gun, and I think the easiest competition gun to really cut your teeth into in terms of making something from the ground up is an AR platform. So yes, that's all. That end of actually making like a Magload branded gun is very pie in the sky at the moment, but we do have a metal 3D printer, so you never know what could be around the corner. We've even talked about doing a 2011, a 2.2 2011. The problem is, whilst that'd be really cool, and it's probably something that we will do at some point, we do also need to look at the bigger market. For the same reason that I get frustrated as a consumer that there isn't enough long barrel pistols out there, or the selection isn't that great. Well, as a manufacturer, I've got to, I understand why the selection isn't great, because a huge amount of investment to create something to a fairly limited market. We want to try and help put the UK on the map where it comes to AR-15s. That would be cool, to see places like the States and abroad coming to us for our receivers, coming to the UK for our receivers, despite the plethora of companies that are out there in the States. But anyway, I digress. Daniel, let them finish them. Get the mags finished first. Absolutely. D-Dirty, I'm watching the live stream an hour late, but from experience as a secondary school teacher, kids can be very cunning in getting passwords through surreptitious observation of authorized users. We had one who got the administrator's password for the network. It may not be the father's fault his guns was used. That's why I like keys. Absolutely. And I completely agree and completely accept what you're saying. And yes, it can happen. People can effectively hack into your safe, if they've got an angle grinder, or they do see you put your code in. It can that does mitigate the blame. From the articles that I've seen, the father knowingly gave the kid the code, so it was something that he was very conscious in doing. The NRA has a monopoly on firearms training here in the USA. Often NRA instructors are written into the laws, so it is impossible to compete with. That is very interesting. And of course, that's why I think there is already a conflict here with Mulberry Partners, because it's the police doing it. Like, whichever way you cut it, the company is owned by 2 ex-senior police officers, and the training is being given out by a previous head of firearms licensing. There's no real balance there. They might be retired from the police, or retired police staff, but they're still police. So in getting favorable laws and favorable actions, they're going to know the right people, and they're going to be able to call in the right favors. And I just don't think there's enough there's enough balance there. Is the channel name going to be changed from English Shooting to International Shooting? No. Maybe I'll change it to ES, and anyone new to the channel will never know what ES means. Just to select 40,000. I have actually I've toyed. I have toyed with changing the channel name for years and years, for a majority of different reasons. I just don't know what I would change it to. I had the idea more recently of making it just more general, not just about shooting. But I don't have enough time to do the shooting content, never mind anything else. Aaron T, will you also do custom straight pull AR-15s? Yes. So, I mean, it's a bit difficult because we do have our good friend Otto, who for stuff like straight pulls and ARs, we will just send people to him. Or what we will do is we will get him to build the base gun, and then we, put the rest of the bits on. So we don't necessarily want to get into a competition with Otto, but yeah, we inevitably, if we're making receiver sets, we're going to be making our own guns, and we'll make straight pulls, we'll make hopefully semi-autos in various calibers, licensing permitted. Happy Metal 3D printer, when did you get that new toy? Ages ago. You've 100% walked past it and seen it when you've come down to the unit. It is it's sort of hiding in plain sight. Next time you're down, I'll point it out to you. But yeah, it's a full blown. It's an SLM machine. We can print in titanium, Inconel. I'm pretty sure like stainless steel, maybe even aluminium. A whole host of. Let me just go. Renshaw SLM. No, that's not it. Just want to see, just remind myself what it can do. Type of process. No, that's all the processes. Just tell me the materials it can do. Anyway, it's a whole host. I can't. It's a whole host of sexy exotic materials. But yeah, it's all about time. We the main thing that we actually wanted to try and do on it was 3D printed muzzle brakes. I know we've already done that, but for like 223, so metal 3D printed muzzle brakes, and do all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes that just would be impossible to machine. But again, looking at it from a business, we've got this this metal 3D printer. It's been sparsely used because, well, it is a very expensive, time-consuming process still. It's not as necessarily clean as a CNC lathe. And for mass production, if we want to go and do 100, 500, 1,000 units of something, doing that on a 3D printer is harder. There's a lot more involved in doing it. Less setup, but certainly more work to get the final product out of it. So yeah, it'd be cool, but we'd end up having to charge like £200 for a muzzle brake, which I'm sure some people would, just for the cool factor of it. But we want to make more stuff. We want to be able to and having more processes as well. The Harding CNC lathe that we have, Connor's very attuned with. He knows that thing inside and out, and he's only getting quicker and better at programming new programming new programs into it, and getting new products out of it, and turning out old products as well. Throwing in a new system there and more equipment, it's more cost, it's more time. Just we need to be more efficient. So yeah, we've got the 3D printer, but if anybody does want to buy a metal 3D printer, you could make us an offer, because it is taking up space, and we just seem to have less and less time to go and do cool stuff on it. You can make a small, slim one named Paul, a thick, chubby one named Callum, and a wide boy, the ultimate PSG size, named Connors. Pot kettle black. Wars. I just recently got my Browning Ultra XS black laminate home. Should I be worried about getting it sized or having other problems? Sorry for the double question. So should you be worried about getting it sized or having other problems? I I don't know. Um, Browning. I've not heard of the. Let me Browning access laminate. Oh God, this is not a site that you want to see when looking for guns. It has been a while since he's appeared on the channel. Anyway, that's less of that. Um, so in terms of getting it sized, it is incredibly important that your shotgun fits you without a shadow of a doubt. Um, so saying that I've never had my Silver Pigeon fitted to me, it's just a good fit from factory for me, that particular gun. So maybe in going, well, if you'd bought it from a gun shop, the gun shop should have checked if the gun fits you and whether it needs modifications. So I would be going to a gun shop and asking them, "What do you think about the fit of this gun with me?" And they'll either say, "Fits you fine, don't worry about it," or actually, it's a horrendous fit. Go and have it moved. So it's very hard. I can't tell you how significant it is or how important it is for you to go and have it sized without having you stood in front of me and looking at how you mount the gun and how the gun fits you. Are we talking about real funds? That's a good name, alternative name for guns. Are we talking about real guns or airsoft? Crazy to hear a Brit um, talking about this. No, no, very real guns. Um, I mean, some of our guns do look a little bit funny. I'm going to bring up a video. And of course, it mutes my mic over the video, so I'm not going to show you the whole thing. But yeah, we have real guns in the UK, and we do know we do know a thing or two about firearms. Like we're not complete Neanderthals. Uh, yeah, but basically handguns, and semi-automatic rifles in Lesson 2.2. That's that's the only thing we're a bit limited on. English shooting. What about the shooting range you plan on opening? Will it be open to members? Um, I mean, it's a goal to get a shooting range. When you say in terms of there's a plan to have a shooting range, well, there is sort of a plan, but it's long. It's it's in the very early stages. But yeah, my basic formula or recipe that I'd be looking to do for a range would be similar to Phoenix or Double Juice, a pay and play where public members of the public can come in and shoot, and also have a club. So yeah, there would be a membership option. Yeah, watch this space. I'm Australian, and it's a nightmare here to get guns. It can be a nightmare here as well. 100%. Americans don't understand what it's like to be Australian. We've got you, bro. We know. I get the same chills seeing a 250 rifle in Walmart as Americans will get seeing a 50 BMG or something. Absolutely. And I get the same chills going into Walmart as well. Seized. Oh, not sized. What? Oh, you said seized. That was that was me going full dyslexic. Just recently got my Browning Ultra XS black laminate home. Should I be worried about it getting seized or having other problems? Okay, I get what you're saying now. Right, it's late and I'm heavily dyslexic. All right. No, it's yes, there has been a plethora of people getting firearms and their certificate seized and revoked and all of this, and big spate of it. But there's still, at last count, I think 650,000 license holders. So it's not like they're kicking in the door of every certificate holder and all of that. It's not. It's a problem, but it's not that everyone should necessarily worry about it. What I would say is the fact that you've linked onto that about having it seized and should you be worried about it. Um, do you have insurance? Do you have legal expenses insurance? Because that's what you should really be worrying about. So Gunplan do it. Gunplan's probably the best. It's got all inclusive. Even the UK PSA has legal expenses insurance for its members now. And given that I've just been part of renewing the insurance for the UK PSA, we were also something a big part that hasn't actually been announced publicly yet. But a big change to the insurance is previously the UK PSA insurance for the legal expenses would only cover legal expenses to fight a revocation, whereas now we managed to talk to the insurers and we got it changed so that it will also kick in for a refusal of an application. Because for me, it's all well and good protecting the people that already have certificates, but to really protect the sport, you need to be able to protect the people that are coming through. And I've had a few people, say to me, "Oh, yes, but it's only certificate holders that are members of the UK PSA." Bollocks, because there's action there, and there are quite young members as well. There's a lot of people that I've seen come through and get there. There's been people consistently while I've been involved in both directly and indirectly with the UK PSA. There's been people on council without FACs. And I think if you're going to offer legal expenses insurance, you need to be able to protect all members, and you need to protect the future of the sport. And protecting the future of the sport is making sure people can go and get the licenses to be able to take part in it. So, yeah. Anyway, make sure you've got insurance. You can join the UK PSA. You'll be covered. You can get a specific insurance plan from Gunplan. I have both. I have a Gunplan, and I'm also obviously a UK PSA member. So covered, double bubble. Hi Nitsa, thanks for joining as always. Thank God we don't have those long-barreled monstrosities here. Yes, that's why we flock to you in numbers to shoot unmolested guns. Phoenix range looks like £1 million facility. It does. But in talking to Glenn, and this isn't like meant as a slight, but I would be surprised if he ended up investing anything near to £1 million and getting that place up and running. Mainly because, like, maybe over time, since the beginning of the range to now, he might have spent £1 million on it. But as far as I'm aware, opening the doors, it was nowhere near, because he did a lot of the work himself, and that's what's just so. And Double Juice as well. They've done the work themselves. They built the range, and yeah, there's some expensive bits of material, like the steel is going to be expensive, the extraction system is going to be expensive, but building a range, like the structure of a range, isn't that expensive. It's just at the base of it, it's a big open space, and they're both built in industrial units, so it's just breeze blocked walls, and to the sides of a range, the sides, certainly in the way that Double Juice and Phoenix have been built, the sides don't need to be bulletproof. First of all, you're not going to be getting a direct 90-degree hit on the wall. It's going to skim. So, that wall therefore doesn't have to be able to take effectively a direct hit. But also, you've got, your outer walls, which is going to be massively thick. So it doesn't need to be still lined the entire run. Just at the back, maybe the floor if you're on a first floor. But if you're on the ground level, if you're on the ground level, then there's anybody above you. You need to obviously make sure the ceiling bullets can't go through the ceiling. But it's not. I'm sure it could run into the multi-million pounds building a range, but these ranges have been built successfully without compromising on quality to a budget. Very, 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 very well done. That's why I would look at them as a model. Daniel, the Trek 22 should be coming down to you soon. That'll be a fun. Please put on the muzzle brake that fits. Absolutely, buddy. Speaking of new members, I was at Bisley recently for a trial shoot day recently, and the RO stressed keeping the sport secret online, social media. What are your thoughts on this? That is my thought. I was just beginning to wind down for the evening. Come on, man. So why? Like first, I would have asked him why. Why keep the sport secret online off social media? Why? And of course, his response is most likely going to be to protect it. Okay, yeah. What's the point in protecting something when you have nothing left of it? Right? Buy a £1 million vault only to find out that what you're trying to do is, retain water and it's got a hole in the bottom. Could be the most secure vault in the world if what you have inside is slowly leaking out. It's probably a bad analogy, but you sort of get what I'm saying. It's like, what are you trying to protect if what you are trying to protect is slowly diminishing through the actions you're taking in thinking that you're protecting it? Like, it's just insanity. For 20, 30 years, we've had this approach of, oh, keep quiet and they'll leave us alone. Don't publicize, don't advertise, right? And people don't know the sport exists. People don't know you can own guns. The majority of people don't know you can own guns here in the UK. And the majority of people, like, I didn't. Like, that's the thing. Like, I only found out about shooting because of university. And I only found out about live fire shooting because of stupid laws. But I didn't know. And so many people that I meet that have recently got into the sport, that have, got into the sport because of this channel, they go, I had no idea this was here. Like, even when I had a shotgun and firearm certificate and I was regularly shooting at Bisley, I didn't know practical shooting existed at all. Right? There are whole areas of this sport that are completely unknown to people within this sport, because everyone wants to keep quiet. No one wants to publicize it. No one wants to rock the boat, and I guess I'm a shining example of what happens when you rock the boat maybe a little bit. Yeah, a little bit too much at times. But I sleep sound at night, because, whilst I may have my own difficulties and I may not have my own certificates, there's a shitload of people out there that do, because of this channel and what has been done. And I can sleep because to me that's the best revenge, for the insanity of myself not having tickets, is the amount of people that because of what myself, Connors, have done, that they now do. And that's all been through public promotion. That's been through using social media, using YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, to show that this sport exists. In the previous few years, we've seen declining numbers of certificates. That's not sustainable. Even if it's 1,000 certificates a year that we reduce by 1,000 a year, it's going to take, okay, it'll take like 500-600 years, but eventually we will have nothing left to protect. And I've said from day one, it is a numbers game. The more numbers we have in the sport, the larger the numbers of certificate holders there are, the safer we will be. Is it going to expose us in being public and being loud and proud about the sport? Is it going to expose us to more criticism? Absolutely. Is it going to gather more negative attention? Sure, right? But it's the rough with the smooth. And I've seen this before, like specifically with the UK PSA, when Sean O'Neill attacked it and gave it some of the most negative press you could imagine, right? Membership soared, saw the biggest singular yearly increase in membership ever, right? Recoil, when they've been attacked, they've seen massive interest and, inquiry increases and membership increases. Yeah, it's all publicity is good publicity, or whatever. But there's that saying exists for a reason, right? Because these papers, they put it out to hundreds of thousands of people, and yeah, there might be that 20% that want to grab the pitchforks and stop us and campaign to put further restrictions on us. But there's going to be thousands within that as well that go, that looks like a bloody good that looks like bloody good fun, and I'm going to take that up. And I don't care. Um one new certificate holder is worth 5 or 10 people just creating noise, negative noise. It's that's it. That whole approach of keep calm, keep quiet, let everything blow over, just doesn't work. It's been proven time and time again to be a really um flawed way of thinking and protecting the sport. Nitsa, I believe the 4 pistol ranges at Nitsa was only 500,000 pound. See, that's, I mean, you want to look at, for those of you that haven't seen Nitsa, I will bring it up. You want to talk about, how much it costs to build a range. Well, I think this is probably the most expensive, not necessarily the most expensive approach, but this is certainly um, but a more expensive example of what you would potentially do. So this is Nitsa for anybody that hasn't seen it from above. So you're saying that basically building these 4 bays, and you're talking, the full backstop. Obviously, they are a full building and roof and all of that, the foundations. Building 4 of them was 500,000. Well, again, um, Phoenix didn't have to put a roof on, didn't have to put sides on, didn't have to lay the foundations. They just had to build a mezzanine. Effectively, the whole thing is a mezzanine, and so it wouldn't have been anywhere. And it's only one range, and they built effectively 4 whole buildings there for 500,000. So Phoenix wouldn't have cost anywhere near the same. And remember, this would have been, I think, 5-10 years ago, when material costs were nowhere near what they are today. Brian Solomon, when will the English shooting live stream go? When is it going to start? It's the international shooting stream at the moment. Is it? Literally just been talking about the NRA and firearms licensing, and anyway. Any time frame on the mags? There's no specific ETA at the moment. I think we're still looking at the sort of 6 to 4 weeks range until we start getting the next batch. But we will keep people updated as needs. Never got back to you on dates for Goodwood. You might need to send that message again to me, bud. Aaron T, I only know about legal gun ownership in the UK because I saw your videos about transporting guns in London years ago. English shooting, if it was for you and Connors, I wouldn't have gotten into firearms at all. I own you both at least a pint. My wife and wallet, on the other hand, are not fans of you. That's a recurring theme of people is wife not being particularly happy. Rambled on far too long about these 2 topics. I don't think I'm going to even touch on the Devon and Cornwall thing. The Devon and Cornwall were just going full Devon and Cornwall. But what I will leave on is, of course, we have hit 40,000 subscribers. So talking about, you know, all the people that you know, we've managed to help into the sport over the years. Well, you know, there's 40,000 people now that have in some way been affected by this channel. Obviously wouldn't have reached 40,000 without any of you lot. So yeah, I think a big thank you to everyone. I'm assuming most of the people watching now are subscribers, so a big thank you to you guys. I mean, I always had, you know, I'm always quite ambitious and what's the word? Yeah, I'd say ambitious. When I start something, I get involved in something. I want to think about the where it could go. But yeah, at some point, thinking that there'd be 40,000 people that would click subscribe on the channel does seem a little bit nuts. And of course, what we talked about last week was doing a giveaway. And of course, because I've been horrendously busy and about to be even more busy for the next 2 weeks, which you will all find out very, very soon. So there'll be some intermittent content from various activities over the next couple of weeks. Some gun related, but yeah. So I've been really struggling with what I wanted to do for the giveaway, and inadvertently, I came up with the perfect plan for the 50,000 subscribers. So click subscribe because there's going to be a bloody awesome prize for that. I think it is just the perfect, absolute perfect prize, but for 50. So we're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to wait for that. Wait for that 50. What I think I'm going to do is obviously, you know, very practical orientated. That's really what I spend a lot of my time doing. And if we talk about shooting sports, we tend to focus about practical shooting. And you know, it's like, what can I do? We gave away a gun last time. The problem with a gun, so we gave away a gun for 30,000 subscribers. The problem with that is that you have to have an FAC straight away, and it limits you to the UK. And there are people that, you know, have been watching this channel from abroad for years, that have been subscribers from the very beginning, and I don't like, you know, narrowing it in. And whilst I'm sure not everybody's into practical shooting, it would seem a waste that, you know, given when I'm not sat here chatting to you guys, I'm helping Connors to run Magload, and the equipment and the choices that we have available to do some pretty cool stuff. I think we're going to go down the route of I'm going to say one-off. It will be a two-off because what we've, I think, decided will be the main prize. I'm going to have one myself, which is like we've seen previously. There was like an ES styled PPQ. Well, we're going to do you won't be able to buy it. I think the PPQ you could, if you wanted to, you could buy that. You won't be able to buy this, but we're going to do an ES edition Nexus Pro rig. So don't know necessarily if the belt is going to be white, but I'm definitely going to try and do something cool on the belt. But we're going to get some custom back plates made for the Nexus Pros, and it's going to be the white and black because that is just my jam. I actually need to get a white cap with the black logo like I have on the Maglo cap as well. A lot of you will know if you've seen any of the guns, the Walther PPQ ES edition, white and black, the battle arms that I use in competition, white and black, my cars, white and black. I like the look of white and black. The logo, the ES logo, white and black. So yes, that is what I'm going to be doing. Just something that's just a bit unique, special, and like literally money can't buy. So little project, and yes, I should have probably had it ready for hitting 40,000, but honestly did sneak up. So as soon as that's ready, as soon as we've got the parts in, I will be getting some photos out, and there will be a way to win it. I know people have moaned previously about Facebook you know, it's always easier to do the prize on Facebook, but I know not all of you are on Facebook. So this time it will be a YouTube only. It'll be shared on Facebook, but you'll only be able to enter it through YouTube. And I might do it as part of I might launch it during a live stream. But there we go. Yes, there will be other prizes as well. I think I'm going to do some like swag bags and other little bits and pieces. So it won't be just one big prize, or there will be a main giveaway prize, which will be the custom rigs, but I will get a load of other bits and pieces because I know you all love a bit of swag. But yeah, there we go. Leave it on a positive note. 40,000. The next one has to be I'm already looking at 50. Like that is another, you know, big seal, and then after that it's going to be, you know, 100,000. I want that plaque. So subscribe, hit the subscribe button. I guess, you know, I'm asking you to subscribe. Probably need to put a bit more content out there. We will get to that. it will come. I promise. I will find some time at some point. I've got so many match videos from last year to edit that I need to get out before the next year's match comes out. So I will get my arse into gear at some point. But I appreciate all you guys' patience and support to get to this point of 40,000 subscribers. Mental. But there we go. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I really need like an outro thing because I don't know how this pauses. That sounds weird. I don't know how this I suppose I could just like show that. Oh, can I? YouTube banner. Oh, do I have to turn off the there we go. Yeah. That's simple. Just fix that. Still learning this software. Yeah, again, thank you for bearing with me. But there we go, guys. I am going to I'm going to leave it there for another week. Well, I say another week. I might be able to do some short live streams. I'm not going to be here, so not just on live stream, but you'll see. There'll be some cool stuff coming. But there we go. I hope you all have a fantastic week ahead. Thanks again, everyone, for your support, for joining, for subscribing, for liking. Hit that like button. There's some cool videos to come out. We've got the arm Sam video. I will be releasing that this Sunday, and backlog of videos that I need to get uploaded and share with you guys. But there we go. Take care. Shoot straight. Be safe. And of course, as always, guys, I hope to see you soon.